right. This is what happens when you have to put on 6 microphones at the same time. Welcome back on Public Square. And the idea segment is about to begin with IOB. I'm going to run through the list of our resource persons very quickly on Public Square. Today we have Ojugo Oji, who is the head. Ojugo Oji, who is the head of research.
Uche is the last name.
Ojugo Uche, who is the head of research for Budget. Thank you very much. Ojugo Uche has been here before, but she's also joining the conversation. Bola Olojede is an economist as well as public affairs analyst. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good to be here.
And economist.
Oluwaseun Akinfolari is the executive director of Civic Media Hub, and the host for the segment is IOA.
Thank you.
Thank you, and so welcome everybody. I mean, we just have 15 minutes. So I'm going to get straight into it. Budget has produced this report, State of the State, and it's been very interesting for many issues which will come up probably in the discussion in the wider public square. But for me, I always seem to be finding myself landing on the square of accountability, because I noticed from the report and the accompanying World Bank comments on the State of the State report that it was noted that there's very low tax morale in Nigeria, that Nigerians we're not very keen on paying tax. And it does seem to me that part of that is to do with the fact that there's not the degree of transparency that we need with regard to spending our money. And on the other hand, we can see the lavish lifestyles, the luxuries that our elected representatives are voting for themselves, whether it's pensions, extra cars, the suspicion of padded contracts and so on. So I thought that I would first of all ask you, you talked about some states have their budget, the state's budget, and then you talked about the citizen's budget. What is a citizen's budget?
So a citizen's budget is a broken down, simplified version of the regular budget, right? Which typically is maybe in a more graphical format, highlighting key areas, key sectors. And why is this necessary? This is necessary because typically you have a budget which is, if we look, for example, at the Nigerian national budget, this year's proposal, about 1,900 words. That is not something easily accessible to citizens. It's not something that people would, look through.
They would understand whether or not the money is in fact being spent, whether they want that money spent. And so.
Precisely. Now, it's not as if it can be analyzed by regular citizens, but in terms of the time, the commitment. So a citizen budget basically, on both at the national and subnational level, is something that basically takes the information, breaks it down, right, in sectorial view, in high graphical format, so that people can access it. And I think also if we look at there's some countries, I know for example Ghana, which goes a step further and even makes it accessible in different languages, right? And why is this important? Because we're extremely very multilingual, multicultural country. Yes, the citizen budget more accessible, simplified.
So actually the issue of a citizen's budget is a key factor when we're talking about accountability. Because I noticed that another issue that was discussed was the fact of low citizen engagement in the budget processes. And I wonder, what does that mean? Is it that the citizens just opt out of the budget process? Or is it that there is no opportunity provided for citizens to participate in the budget processes? Have any of you?
I mean, let me start off. It's a mixed issue, depending, of course, on the on the state, on the particular constituency. But typically, you see one of several things. Either one, there is very high level engagement. Right?
Now, what does high level engagement look like?
So,
how does it?
So high level engagement, where you call together, for example, CSOs or citizens, key citizens, and you do like a 1 hour, 30 minutes session, and then to
Now,
almost
is
to
this
tick
before the budget or after the budget?
before the budget. So in collating information, right, that go collating project ideas, as well as key issues, say on a state level, right? And I know certain states have their community development associations, at which level they do this, right? But you even having some, so there's sometimes
issues that can help identify priorities.
precisely, right, that can help identify priorities and projects that need to be done in certain constituencies. So this is kind of, I would say, the middle level, where you have something high level, where you're almost ticking a box, and you take these several notes from several places and they're filed and don't really contribute to the process. But even a step like worse is where you don't have a needs assessment, and sometimes you see that on projects that end up in the budget. You can see a community that has 3 boreholes, and their need is actually for say a health center, but what is in the budget is yet another borehole, right? And you begin to ask, was a needs assessment really done in this case?
Well, I think one of the things that make a budget more robust is the bottom-up feedback into the budget in itself. But in the case of both national and sub-national budgets in Nigeria, there are no structures to deliver anything from the citizens. No open sessions, so there's no engagement.
Can you tell me a country where we see this type of thing happening? Are there any countries where this type of involvement?
I may not be able to give specifics, but I can tell you about some communities, say in the US, for example, who have a visioning document, a county with a 10-year visioning document. Now, that visioning document has milestones per year of what that community seek to achieve as it goes along the pathway of that visioning document. So that what it seeks to achieve will automatically be an input into a budget process, so that you be sure that you are actually helping that community to achieve what it said it seeks to achieve.
In fact, if I can refer to myself as a one-time member of the steering committee of the state peer review mechanism of the Nigerian Governors Forum, where the states that were ready to go in for the process, they had to come up with their plan, and it was they really had to go into all the area. They had to go around their communities. They had to consult, and then they had to come up with this plan. Then the technical experts of the state peer review mechanism would come in and assess the plan, and eventually the state would now say, this is our plan, and then this is what we intend to do. So there would then now be there would be something that everybody would feel that they had participated in.
That's a much better process.
But that, unfortunately, we had done just Ekiti State and Anambra State, and then the Nigeria Governors Forum went into a kind of meltdown, and after that they just felt, no, this is a bit onerous and rigorous, let's just pick out our star projects.
So you make a good point about it being onerous, or being rather rigorous, tedious. Yes. It's extremely tedious, right? And also there's a need for technical personnel, because I think ultimately people have such disparate, such wide-ranging needs that if you're getting, inputs from the grassroots, ultimately you will have, at least at the starting point, a wish list, and you just can't fulfill everything. Yeah, so it's then that process of prioritizing, right, in a way that still takes into account what people have said, and in a way that is transparent to everyone, that is the difficult and rigorous thing. And actually I have one example that I read about recently, and I know participatory budgeting, I know, has been historically big in Brazil, but I also found out recently, so in Boston, right, in the US, where it's not the whole budget that is decided in a participatory format, but a small fund is carted out, right, and youth in Boston decide what to do with that particular fund, right, in a way that is transparent, in a way that shows, okay, we can't have it all, right, these are the this is the give and take, right? If we're going to fund this, this can be funded. And I mean, right, it's just a small city, and one particular fund for a particular group. Because if we're going to because if we're going to do it on the whole board, as you say, is onerous and it's very rigorous, or rather rigorous.
I mean, let me put it like this, because you see, I mean, after all, if budget is able to make some of these things simple for even those who are not economists and mathematical experts and accountants to be able to at least have an idea, because it does seem to me that the accountability part of it requires not just that people have an output, but that we also have an idea of what the money is spent on. Because looking at the state of the state reports, it's, I mean, you've talked about the states which are able to sustain their public spending even without their allocation from the federal accounts allocation, whatever it is, the FAAC, I've forgotten what the AAC is. I think I would know. But so there are those states that can fund everything they need to do, even without that money. And then there are more states, about 19 of them, that are able to, provided they get their allocation from the committee. But what's noticeable is that it's not, even some of the states which participate, I mean, we call them oil-producing states. Many of them, their oil is produced so far out to sea that it's really a bit of a stretch of imagination. But they participate in the division of the 13% that is set aside as derivation from oil. And yet some of them are still spending more than they are getting in income. And my question is, I mean, in your State of the State report, you focused on just one aspect of delivery, which was health. Yeah. And you were able to show how very far below even our own national targets the states are falling, not to talk of the international targets or the millennium, these sustainable development goals and so on. But, I mean, we could go to education, we're also below it. And even when we look at things like roads and so on, so I'm left to wonder, what exactly are the states spending this money on? And they still don't have enough.
Recurrent expenditure, basically.
Yeah, but recurrent, I mean, even recurrent expenditure. For example, if the recurrent expenditure is that you're spending money on teachers' salaries, then I would say, yes, I understand. I mean, yeah, we would like to see them also building better schools and so on. But definitely the situation where the states are always having to look for loans to be able to pay salaries.
So there's a gap we're not paying attention to, which is the security vote gap.
Yes.
Because in theory, and all the experts say it all the time, and I've had long discussions with my old school colleagues that are in many of these state governments, and I say, look, what exactly happens here where a state government can decide that they can take 25% or 30% of everything they have and just put it into security votes?
That they don't have to account for.
Yes, and it just goes like that.
Well, some states do, and some states don't. But it's not. But I think that I think even though I appreciate that we should, there are the things that the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. But I think that even the known unknowns are alarming enough. And so I'm still asking, what is it that they're spending the money that they have on? Because we know that so many of them owe salaries.
See. I think earlier this week, maybe on Monday, in the newspaper, there was a state that recently migrated onto, I think, an equivalent of 5 PPIS. Okay. They have 101,000 thereabouts civil servant. Over 40,000 were ghosts.
Yes.
So if you're paying 40% of your payroll to ghosts,
it's fraudulent.
It's
really
fraudulent. And what is more worrisome about payment to ghosts is that we've never really bothered to ask who were the ghosts, who collected the salaries for those ghosts last month. If I had 10 names on my payroll last month, and this month I discovered that 4 of them were ghosts, so I got rid of the 4. Who collected the salary of those 4 last month? Nobody bothered to ask.
Well, doesn't that require some level of smart investigation because the money is paid into banks.
It's very so it
And the banks are
doesn't
not-
require anything.
So we're getting to the point. It's corruption. Let's ask ourselves this question. The Nigerian budget has been growing over time in size. The workforce that we pay the recurrent expenditure hasn't grown as much, right? So our recurrent expenditure manages to grow, right? Because of what you said, which is ghost workers and all the mechanisms that have been created to ensure that the recurrent
Including in the police, by the way.
Yes. So that I think this discussion actually is a source of concern and a need for investigation to check who are the ghost workers, what are the mechanisms that we use to bloat the recurrent expenditure, because it's this mechanism that has stifled the opportunity for us to grow the capital expenditure substantially so that we can do new projects that actually will lead to development.
Well, it's also one of the things that came out of the report that Nigeria has a relatively small government. So, so at every level, we have a small government. The amount that we pay for this our small government compared to what our equivalent states like us, even though we are the giant of Africa, you know, that states that would like
Those
to be
small-
near
those small
the small ones, that they're getting more bang for their buck than we as Nigerians are getting for our bigness and our
For
size.
instance, one who say things like ordinary Ghana there.
Yes, ordinary Ghana is being very extraordinary by our own standards. So we have a small government. We are not seeing the result that we should see from it. What is happening?
And in terms of, I mean, this is not necessarily answering all the specifics of the question, right? But I think just to highlight, as you've said already, that recurrent expenditure is not necessarily bad. In fact, we should be spending more because it's, you know, recurrent-wise, because teachers, employing more teachers, training them, that will come from your recurrent side. Same also with doctors, which you have a scarcity of, you know, enormous scarcity of. That will also come from your recurrent side.
And nurses and
You know,
everybody,
and nurses,
other health
all the
workers.
exactly healthcare personnel, that will come from your recurrent side. Now, in terms of and so it's about not only the spending, but the quality of spending, as you've said, right? How do we get a bang for our buck? How do we use what we have? Yes, it's not necessarily sufficient because we all know we have revenue issues, but at the national and subnational side, how do we use what we have to improve our indices, right? And to the question of what are states then spending on, right? I think that is where, you know, right now we've in the state of states we looked at a pretty aggregated current expenditure,
Yes.
right? And when we're looking at certain states, we're seeing, okay, where you have, say, economic sector, administrative sector, there were some states where administrative sector, broadly speaking, right, broadly categorized, was getting more money than, you know, the economic sector, right, where we had that level of information. But this, I mean, I feel ties back to, right, the idea of ideas, and the fact that transparency, greater transparency, accountability allows for such questions to then be answered, right? And I don't think we've said it yet, but it is worthy to note that states have been improving on the transparency angle,
Yes.
right? And that is something.
But it's coming from a
praise.
very low base.
It is coming from a low base, but still, right? Where we in 2018, around this time, 2018, 20 budgets were available from states, and 3 citizen budgets. To this time in 2019,
Yes.
we have 32 state budgets and 21 citizen budgets, right?
Okay.
And that means that they are paying attention to advocates, right, and advocacy work, and 2 also, I mean, part of it too is because of incentives, right? There's a World Bank CITAS program which incentivizes transparency, accountability, right? That incentivizes that with performance-based, you know, financing. However, you know, not all states are
I think
participating.
Is it a case of the more you show, the more you can chop?
No. The more you show, actually, the more people will
Can ask
expect
questions.
more from you.
Exactly.
And when you actually, get into this issue of understanding the need for accountability and you approach it with integrity, you will find that you actually don't get a lot of kudos for it. You actually get people expecting more and criticizing you more. But at the end, when we look at the indices of your states, whether it's the number of doctors, whether it's the maternal mortality rates, and so on, you should see an improvement, because you as a performing governor, an action governor, would have realized that actually you have been able to impact the lives of the people whose welfare is supposed to be your primary concern. And that when you do that, actually, the money that you thought you needed to be able to bribe your way to here or there, or to not to be able to surround yourself with guards so that they don't kill you after you've gone out of office, that actually the people, people are, we demand a lot. We're not necessarily to be reasonable and understanding with you, but really, we are satisfied with so little. When the smallest bit of performance, we'll start shouting people's name and praising them.
We even publish the fact that a governor paid salary.
Yes, we would.
I don't know, if people work and you pay them their wages,
Which is really
what is
the
to
most
celebrate about
basic.
that?
So I want to say that I need to bring the ideas segment to a close. We've kind of overrun a little bit. So I want to thank you all very much for being on the ideas segment, for helping to highlight some of these issues, because accountability at the end of the day is about delivering a better standard of living to the people who have been who elected various public officers. And you're going to be discussing how some governors don't like to be asked questions, and that when they're asked questions, they start to talk treason and all this type of rubbish that they've been talking. But actually, the reward should be that you have done your best and you have improved the lives of the people, and that if they ask you questions, then
You should be able to
you
answer.
will answer them. It's not you're not a king or a god who cannot be questioned, and even even Job complained to God. So I don't think that we should say that because cannot receive our complaints. But this is the issue. In the long run, if we want to go out and be proud as Nigerians, we need our people in office to accept the idea of being questioned. And we want to thank you, Budget, and all of you who are in Civic Hub and accountants and economists who shed light on some of this darkness, because the more we shed the light, the more we will see integrity being forced out of the corners where it's hiding at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so we'll take a quick break. We come back and then we can delve into all of the other issues on Public Square. So please keep listening.